Good afternoon. It's nice of you to come, and thank you for coming. This morning, I formally notified Governor Granholm of my resignation as a justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, effective as 11 a.m. this morning, August 26, 2010. I also notified the state court administrator and the Secretary of State in accordance with the law. In my almost 36 years as a judge and justice, always elected by Michigan voters, 12 years as a trial judge, 8 years as Court of Appeals judge, and almost 16 years as a justice of the Supreme Court, including 2 years as Chief Justice, I have continuously endeavored to act and perform in the best interest of the people of Michigan. In June, when I filed my affidavit of candidacy to put my name on the November ballot for re-election, I believed that doing so would be in the best interest of the people. I am deeply grateful to all my many supporters throughout the state who have urged me to run again. Justice Weaver, we need her, they say, offering every kind of support. I'm aware that the pundits believe I would be reelected even as the independent candidate that I am would have been without party nomination and special interest funding. But that is not the point. After considerable deliberation, thought, and prayer, I've concluded that I have done all that I can do as a justice, and now believe I can be of most use as a citizen in helping further the critically needed reforms of the justice system. The present system of dual processes by which we elect and appoint Supreme Court justices is deeply flawed and in need of an overhaul. Specifically, we need to promptly reform the process of how we select justices, and we need transparency and accountability in the administration of the people's judicial business by the Michigan Supreme Court. The open discord on this court over the last 10 years is not really so much about clashes of strong personalities, but rather is the result of the formation of power blocks of justices, usually joining together with a majority of 4 votes to promote agendas of political parties and special interests, agendas of personal interest, philosophies and ideologies, and agendas of biases and prejudices. Anytime power blocks form and the court locks up, independent thinking and the interests of the people of Michigan suffer. It is that independent thinking judge who should be the most highly valued member of any court. That independent thinking judge is not agenda-driven and does not hold to political party lines, philosophies, or ideologies. We need justices and judges who are dedicated to the rule of law, who are independent, impartial, exercise judicial restraint, apply common sense, and who are wise, honest, orderly, competent, fair, civil and professional, open, not secretive, and who are nonpartisan. Our current system of political party nominations does not advance these qualities, nor does the current system prize the diversity and independence of thought that comes from geographic separation. The overwhelming majority of justices on this court come from the Detroit-Lansing Beltway. Of the 7 justices, 4 are from Southeast Michigan, Grosse Pointe Park, and Bloomfield Hills. 2 are from the Lansing area, and after my resignation, none were from northern Michigan, until, thankfully, the governor remedied this by an appointment of a justice from northern Michigan. Independent justices cannot go along to get along when doing the people's judicial business. Supreme Court justices must fulfill their duty to the people to inform them of what they need to know, no more or no less, about not only what the Supreme Court does and decides, but how, when, and where. The Michigan Supreme Court should not be a secret club, but should instead act in a transparent, open, and accountable manner. To be absolutely clear, when I say reform, I do not mean the elimination of election of justices. I mean specific reforms of the election and appointment processes in Michigan's dual system for selection of justices. In the last election of a Supreme Court justice in 2008, $7.5 million was spent for one open spot on the Michigan Supreme Court. It appears that in this year, 2010, there will be likely spent even more millions of dollars, closer to the $15 million that was spent in the 2000 election for 3 spots on the court. The many millions of dollars spent will be untimely reported, if reported at all. This type of unseemly, exorbitant, and unhinged spending and untimely reporting, or no reporting at all, for Supreme Court justice elections needs to be reformed before the 2012 election. Millions of dollars are spent in Supreme Court justice elections by political parties and special interests for TV ads filled with some true, some untrue information, misinformation, incorrect information, and incomplete and misleading information. It's absurd, illogical, and irrational to believe that these expenditures will likely result in the election of justices that are dedicated to the rule of law, independent, impartial, exercise judicial restraint, apply common sense, and are wise, honest, orderly, competent, fair, civil, and professional, open, not secretive, and are nonpartisan. My 6 specific proposals for reform of the system of selection of justices appear on my personally funded website, justiceweaver.com. The top 2 proposals are currently before the legislature in Senate committee and do not require constitutional amendment. They are: 1, electing justices by district, and 2, removing the political party nomination from justice candidates. I strongly urge the legislature and the people to tell them to enact these reforms before year's end so that the Michigan Supreme Court can move forward with transparency and accountability in 2011. The remaining 4 proposals for reform are: end governor's unchecked appointment power, end lack of rotation in office, reform campaign finance reporting requirements, and implement public financing requirements. I remain committed as a citizen now to actively help to reform Michigan's judicial system, specifically, again, including prompt reform of the selection process for justices and the administration of the people's judicial business by the Michigan Supreme Court with needed transparency and accountability. Finally, I am most grateful to the people of Michigan for electing me as a justice and trusting me with the privilege of serving them on the Michigan Supreme Court for nearly 16 years. This statement that I've just made will be posted very shortly on my website, justiceweaver.com, and I urge all who hear about this to read it and consider it. I thank you very much for your time and attention, and thank you, Governor Granholm.
Thank you, Justice Weaver. You have been an incredible servant to the state of Michigan and our citizens. For 36 years, Justice Elizabeth Weaver has served the families of Michigan, and she has served them as a judge, but also as an advocate, as you have heard, for fair, common sense justice. When she was inducted into the Michigan Women's Hall of Fame several years ago, Justice Weaver talked about the principles that have guided her life and her career. And you mentioned, Justice Weaver, that above the doors in your home and in your office, she has written these words. And the words are, do right and fear not. Do right and fear not. I love that. What a simple and a direct expression of one of life's most basic principles. Justice Weaver, your career stands as a testament to that simple truth. During your time on the bench, from probate court in Leelanau County to the Court of Appeals and then to the Supreme Court, you have dedicated your career to doing what is right for Michigan's vulnerable children and their families, doing right for those who are pleading their cases before you, doing right for those who needed an independent judiciary to assure balance and fairness. And your commitment to doing what's right for people in need never wavered for fear of personal or political fallout. We appreciate your courage. Justice Weaver has represented the very best of Northern Michigan, and you leave very big shoes. And so the next justice of the Michigan Supreme Court must share your compassion for those in need and your commitment to justice and your fierce independence. And I can't think of anyone who better meets those criteria than Judge Alton Thomas Davis of Grayling. And so, moments ago, I had the privilege of appointing Judge Davis as Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. Until today, Justice Davis served the citizens of Michigan on the Court of Appeals. This was a position that I had the honor of appointing him to 5 years ago. When he was on the Court of Appeals, or whether he was a circuit judge, in fact, he was circuit judge for more than 20 years, 17 years of those 20, he was the chief judge, or, well, he was a prosecutor before that. Judge Davis has served the public and upheld our Constitution with honor and with distinction. Born and raised in Northern Michigan, Justice Davis has brought a common sense and a strong sense of respect for all people to his work on the bench. I'm pleased to replace a great Northern Michigan justice with another great Northern Michigan justice, since the goal of this administration has been to promote one Michigan, Michigan appointees that reflect all of Michigan in all of its richness and its people and its geography. Justice Davis is the most experienced jurist that I have ever appointed to the bench, all courts, 26 years of experience as a judge. He will be the most experienced jurist on the Supreme Court except for Justice Kavanaugh. He was elected by his fellow judges to serve as the president of the Michigan Judges Association. He's been universally praised by both those who appear before him and his colleagues, his fellow judges on the bench, and people with knowledge from both political parties. He's been described in the following way. In the midst of conflict, Judge Davis is always the grown-up in the room. Indeed, while the acrimony on the Michigan Supreme Court has been well documented, Justice Davis is someone who can bring a sense of collegiality and gravitas, a seasoned, unflappable, no-nonsense, steady hand. Most importantly to me, Justice Davis knows that the decisions of the Supreme Court shape the most fundamental human aspects of our public and private lives as citizens. Whether we can express ourselves openly, how we worship, how we gather, the extent to which we have individual freedom over intimate and personal decisions, and the complexity of legal boundaries, the boundary between government and personal liberty, the boundaries between corporations and the individual, between the state and federal governments, and sometimes the tension between the full expression of liberty and equality. Justice Davis will respect the timelessness of the words of our state and federal constitutions. Indeed, our founding fathers were visionary, but their vision, they knew, could not extend to every circumstance and every question that decades of human advance would bring. Instead, our founding fathers articulated timeless principles that are large enough, enduring enough, to account for changing circumstances brought about by fate or accident or purpose. I know that Justice Davis will bring reverence for those enduring broad principles to his work on the Supreme Court. And I know that his commitment to defending our Constitution, judicial restraint, collegiality, and a transparent, accessible judiciary will be unwavering. To his grandson Benjamin, who's here today with the Davis family, he's simply Grandpa. But it's an honor and a privilege for me to introduce him to you as the newest member of the Michigan Supreme Court, Justice Alton Thomas Davis.
Thank you very much, Governor. I am Justice Alton Thomas Davis. I've been a judge in the state for the past 26 years, 21 as a circuit court trial judge in northern Michigan, and the past 5 years as a judge of the Michigan Court of Appeals. I very much wish to thank Governor Granholm for this opportunity to continue my work on behalf of the citizens of Michigan from the Supreme Court. Your trust and confidence are most sincerely appreciated, Governor. I would like to take a minute to introduce my immediate family who are present here today. My wife, Sandra Kay, my daughters, Breon Thompson and her husband, Jason of Traverse City, my daughter, Colby Chilcote, and her husband, Timothy of Ann Arbor, and my grandson and fishing partner, Benjamin Henry Thompson. They will always be the greatest accomplishment of my life, and I'm very proud of each of them. I wish to express my appreciation to my longtime colleague and friend, Justice Elizabeth Weaver. For the past 36 years, first as a probate judge in Michigan's beautiful Leelanau Peninsula, as a judge of the Michigan Court of Appeals, and as a justice and chief justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, Justice Weaver has worked tirelessly in the interests of the people of this state. For many years and on numerous occasions, we have worked closely together on projects to improve the delivery of legal services to the people of the state of Michigan. Justice Weaver's guiding principle, as you have heard, has been do right and fear not. She has lived by those words, even when to do so has brought unwelcome contention to her personally. I salute her for that. I agree with her sentiment, and I intend to follow the trail that she has blazed. I am certain that the changes being accomplished here today will not diminish her determination to speak out forcefully in the days and months ahead toward the end of improving the legal system in the state of Michigan. Right?
Right.
All right. For my part, I believe in open, impartial, and prompt resolution of disputes and lawsuits. I believe that every person has a right to be fully heard, to be treated courteously, and to have their issues considered and decided without fear or favor, by an impartial judge, a judge that is professional and who acts professionally. In the North, where I reside, and in all of Michigan for that matter, all of us have great diversity of life experience, occupation, education, and means. But there's one thing that we should have in common, and that's mutual respect for each other. Civility in public discourse is always to be desired, but it is particularly important when the environment surrounding us is charged with the stress of rapid change and unwelcome events as we see in Michigan today. I will do my best to lead by example in advancing these goals. I do note that these are times of great change and challenge in our beloved state. For many of our residents, they are hard times. The new realities require that we reform our way of doing things in the private sector and in government. I am pleased to report that the legal community is rising to that challenge and that for the past year it has been engaged in a comprehensive task force effort to evaluate how we conduct our business and what reforms would be better suited to the needs of the people going forward. I have been deeply involved as a leader of that effort and look forward to reporting to you on our progress and recommendations in the days and months ahead. In each of the 6 elections that I have had as a judge, I have offered the voters a contract. The agreement is that in return for their support at election time and throughout the term, I in return would work diligently every day that I serve to provide the people with a court that they could take pride in. Today, I make that same offer to all of the residents of Michigan, and I respectfully request your continued support, and I thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, thank you all very much.
Okay, good.